Section 1.2 is on the laws of exponents, the rules of exponents. So rule number 1, when you are multiplying and you have the same base, you keep the base, you add the powers. Rule number 2, a power to a power, you multiply the powers. Rule number 3, when you have parentheses, the exponent on the outside of the parentheses gets distributed to everything inside the parentheses. So in part 1 of exponent law 3, it's a times b to the nth power, which is a to the nth, b to the nth. In part 2, when you're dividing, same thing. Because it's in parentheses, that exponent belongs to both a and b. Exponent law number 4, when you are dividing and you have the same base, you're going to subtract the powers. Exponent law number 5, as long as a doesn't equal 0, when you have a negative exponent, the way you change it so that it becomes positive is by doing the reciprocal. So 1 over a to the mth power. Law number 6, when you have a to the 1/mth, which is a fraction, an exponent that's a fraction, then the denominator of that fraction is what's called the index. It's what's inside of the radical sign, like the little actual radical sign, that's the index right here. Okay, this is the index. So the denominator is the index, and then the numerator is what's inside here. So a to the n over m, again, the denominator is the index, and it's all raised to the nth power, which you can write outside parentheses or inside. And it doesn't really matter. So here are some exercises. Number 1, x to the third times x to the fourth. I have exactly the same base, so I'm multiplying, I add the powers. The answer is x to the 7th power. X cubed divided by x to the x squared. You have the same base. When you are dividing, you subtract the powers, so it's x to the 1 power or just x. Part C, power to a power, you multiply the powers, so x to the 6th power. Part D, in parentheses, 2x to the 4th power, 2 to the 4th power, x to the 4th power, 2 to the 4th power is 16, so 16x to the 4th power. Part E, x to the -3, you want to get rid of that negative exponent, so it becomes 1 over x cubed, okay? You do the reciprocal. For part F, remember the 7 is the index, so it's the denominator, so x to the 1/7 power. For part G, x to the 2/3 power. For part H, anything to the 0 power equals 1. For part I, the rest of these I actually wrote out for you, so it's easier for you to see. So for part I, remember anything to the 0 power is 1. A power to a power you multiply, so x to the 12th power. And then x squared times 1 times x to the 12th. You have the same base, you're multiplying, you add the power. So the answer is x to the 14th power. For part J, in parentheses, the 3 gets distributed, so 2 to the 3rd power is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. And then x to the -3rd power, x to the 3rd power. When you have the same base, you add the exponents. So -3 plus 3 is just 0, and x to the 0 power is 1, so the answer is just 8. Exercise K, x squared times x to the 1/2. You have the same base, so you're going to add the exponents. 2 plus 1/2 is 2.5. And if you remember, when you have 2.5, you multiply and you add to make this an improper fraction. So that's how I got 5 over 2, because 2.5 is equal to 5 over 2. So x to the 5 over 2 power over 3x to the 4th, because that's my denominator. And now, because I have the same base, don't worry about the 3 stays down here. I'm worrying about the powers here for the same base, which is my x. I have to subtract. So 5/2 minus 4. 4 is really 4 over 1. And if I wanted to have the same denominator of 2, the 4 becomes an 8. So 5 over 2 minus 8 over 2 is -3 over 2. If right now you're freaking out because of the fractions, don't. Put this into your calculator and you're going to see it's going to give you -1.5. And then when you go to math in the calculator, which is right below the green alpha button, and you have the first option frac, it'll turn it to a fraction. So x to the negative 3 over 2 all over 3, because remember I took care of this by subtracting. And then the negative I'm going to get rid of by putting all of it in the bottom. So the answer is 1 over 3 x to the 3/2 power. So that's k. L, this exponent on the outside belongs to everything inside. So a power to a power you multiply, x to the 12, y to the negative 6. Take care of the negative by moving it down to the bottom. For part M, you multiply, again, because it's a power to a power. And here the same thing. Remember, even if you don't see an exponent, it would be a 1. So then 1 times 7 is 7, 5 times 7 is 35. For n, I do the same thing. 3 squared is 9, x to the negative 4th, 2 squared is 4, y to the 6th power. Because of the parentheses, the 2 belongs to everything. And then here, the only thing I have to fix is that I should have this as a positive exponent, so I have to drop it down to the bottom. Finally, for O, 1 over the 4th root of x to the 7th. The index, which is right here, is my denominator. So 1 over x to the 7/4 power. And these are the answers.